Coronavirus is clearly the story of 2020. But what has been going on since the start of this month? Education, immigration, housing, and the presidential and governmental authority has been some of the various topics brought to the surface recently. We'll try to discuss these and, of course, voting today. Welcome to We the People, where the political is personal. I'm your host, Aya. I'm joined by co-host Kenny. How you doing, Kenny?
I'm good. What's up, man?
Doing all right, doing all right.
Looking good over there in that white shirt on.
Man, I try to keep it angelic.
Okay, there you go. That's good. I like it. That's good.
So, what drives you about politics?
You know, I mean, I grew up around government.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, no one's in my family politician, but growing up in Washington, D.C., politics has always been there. So I've always had like a subliminal version of politics as a child, not fully understanding what it was about. But as I got older, I started realizing that the country is shaped by the things that happen in Washington, D.C. So from that, it's become a grand thing for me to even just knowing what's going on, knowing the decisions that are being made, policies that are being written, and how they're being enforced. So I guess that's where I'm at with that.
Okay, sound right, all right. Otherwise, I'm also joined by the beautiful Nichelle. Nichelle, how you doing?
With an N.
Great, how are you?
Doing okay.
Good.
What drives you about politics?
I like the fact that it's always changing. You can't really pick one side and stay on it. You can't be a Republican or a Democrat. You know, if you really look at the all of the different issues, a lot of times you'll find yourself on the side of one or the other that you weren't really expecting. You can't be 100% of one or the other. There's just always something going on. Like, look at all that has happened in the last 3.5, 4 years. I just like the fact that it's always changing.
Right?
Exactly. And like even before then, I just like the fact that there's always change. There's always something to talk about. But yeah, sometimes I get a little bit too involved in it. Sometimes you really just got to pull back and realize, like especially the national stuff, it's not as big as you think it is.
Oh, we're gonna
you got to get back into the local.
Can I just tap into something you just said real quick?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I never thought about it like that. I mean, because what is a Democrat and what's a Republican? And I know that's probably a whole different show right there. But because who's to say who's liberal and who's progressive?
Well, don't forget the green.
Not progressive, I'm sorry.
Conservative.
I'm sorry, which state?
I said don't leave out the green parties and libertarians.
Okay, so I'm sure some of them have a little conservatism in them and a little bit of
Liberal.
you know. So I mean, how do you know? And what's considered the what's the one in the middle?
Moderate.
Moderate.
Yeah. Whoever.
I think I'm more moderate than anything else, but I'm also a little bit progressive. I don't know if I'm really liberal on anything.
Okay. All right.
I'm somewhere in that 40 to 60% percentiles.
Well, we're definitely going to hear some of that today then. Controlling the show and making us look good and sound wonderful is Patricia. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Yeah,
All right.
pushing the buttons.
All right. She's pushing the buttons. What drives you to politics?
I guess for me, since my father was in the military, everything we did was based off of politics. Our moves, where we lived. My mother was really into it, and she still is. But the crazy part, by her being so involved in it, it kind of pushed me back. I was like, okay, I've heard enough. You know, I've done enough. I had to move because this person is having war here, or this person is doing this. And so I'm just now starting to come back and say, you know, I need to start paying attention and listening, because my mother never stopped. And she calls me daily to tell me what's going on because I need to know. So, you know, her and my brother, they are gung-ho into politics. But I'm just now starting to find my flavor again with it. So,
Yeah.
Especially since there's a lot going on.
Very much so. So I like to start about the recent Supreme Court decisions. There are a ton of them. I'd like to talk about, well, first of all, involving the president. The Supreme Court recently passed a decision to say that the president was was not immune to prosecution. So if the state of New York or any state has a case against him that involves his finances, they can request his tax returns.
Right.
Congress, on the other hand, they need a more stable decision moving forward. So, Kenny, what do you think about the decision?
I think it's a great decision. I think it puts him in the same barrel with everybody else. That you're not above the law,
You're not God.
and you're definitely not a king. So in this particular case, I think it levels the playing field. Which I'm thinking some of that decision came down. Those prosecutors of the Southern District of New York and everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a couple of them in D.C. as well. Are starting getting their papers together, preparing their cases, getting ready for indictments because there's enough to hand out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's a great decision for the country. I think it's a great decision for any future presidents.
For transparency.
For transparency, exactly.
All right. Michelle, you got any thoughts on it?
I gotta agree on that. I also think that Trump definitely got shocked by a couple of his justices. I think he was expecting it to go his way. He's been working all these years, trying to stack the deck in his favor. So I think that he got a nasty little surprise, and I think he's in for a few more.
Yeah, Justices Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh cited in favor of the state of New York.
But you also got to look at the Chief Justice because he pushed that.
Yes.
Yeah.
He said that it's political climate, what he doesn't want to look is political. And, whether that influence, these are new judges, on the bench, relatively new. And so for them, they have to look at the entire, the Supreme Court in a whole.
Yeah.
Because what if it did slightly go, or what if it did go, the mere fact that it was, 9-2?
It was 7-2.
7-2, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
7-2. So that I wonder who the other two were just anymore.
It was Clarence
Clarence.
Thomas and Samuel Alito.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave my opinion on Clarence Thomas.
All right. So but something, I think it was a good precedent. Against this president because the law is here for a reason, and yet you're bound by the law. Even as president, you're not a king like we was talking about earlier. So I think it's a great decision.
Yeah, and the Chief Justice is the one who wrote the opinion.
Yep.
He decides who writes the opinion and dissenting opinion, and he's the one who's said you're not a king.
Right.
I thought it was cool that they didn't really seem to go at it as a conservative or as a liberal.
Right.
They were strictly objective.
Right.
I think that they just looked at the facts and
Yep.
moved forward with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they didn't seem to be taking into account that it was Trump that they were dealing with. He was just a person.
Trump is going to be out. They have lifetime appointments. So
Yeah.
after this is gone, it just.
They're in there. They're in there unless they do something in propriety,
Right.
or they get tired.
I think it's going to impact Barr as well. But
Yeah.
we already know what Barr's hand had in some other issues.
Yes. Another issue during the Supreme Court was that teachers initially, I think it had to do with Hobby Lobby, I'm not sure, but teachers who would, if they needed contraception and they worked at a religious school, the court cited in favor that religious schools can deny contraception against their religious beliefs, which further blurring the lines
So
between.
what was the decision?
It was for the religious schools to say if they don't have to put it on a insurance plan, or if a teacher or wanted contraception, and they wanted the schools to pay for it, the religious schools can say no.
That was something about that. If you guys remember during all the stuff that's going on with Obamacare,
Mm-hmm.
there was a decision back then as well.
Yeah.
Where they were saying that some companies like Chick-fil-A, religious based, didn't have to pay for that part of the insurance and they can opt out of it.
Yeah.
So I think all this kind of ties in, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, because it's still, they say, division between church and state,
Right.
but these decisions are blurring the lines that, decisions where religious organizations, churches who don't pay taxes,
Right.
get to decide, laws.
Well, it kind of also goes back to your insurance shouldn't be tied to your employment either.
Exactly.
So many people, they're just holding on to a job that they don't even want to stay at because that's their insurance, and if we were to lose, the ADA or the Affordable Care Act, you know, and pre-existing condition protection.
Right.
I mean, people will really be staying, you know,
Well, there's
sticking
still
into jobs that they don't want to be in.
There's still 40 million people unemployed,
40 plus million.
plus
Yeah.
million, and not every state has Medicare expansion,
Right.
and so, you know, if if you don't have health care because you're unemployed, please call in at 203-802-5694 or anything else in that nature what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, I have a quick question on that. As far as the church not wanting to provide contraceptive to their employees, I thought that was already a law that stated that, especially for women, that that your health care was providing like free yearly exams and contraceptives and things like that. So how can they say that the church cannot give you, but it's already included in your insurance?
I don't know if contraceptives are included in the well woman thing.
Well,
Is it-
yeah, it's included.
it is?
Yeah. Well, I know birth control
Mhm.
pills are included, that they are able to receive those. So I'm still trying to understand, how can they say, oh, well, we won't give you birth control pills?
And if they won't give them that, then what will they give them in exchange? I mean, there needs to be a trade-off. It
Right.
can't just be we're going to take something and not give you something back.
Right.
Just say no.
Oh, there you go.
Well, they gave
We give you purity.
Abstinence. Abstinence will give you. You're not married, abstinence.
Well, even if you're married.
Pull out. Pull out. Just pull out.
Rhythm and blues.
Hopefully it works.
Oh man, another one. This involves voting between the Supreme Court. They said if an elector, so trying to keep it straight here, the last election we had about 536 electoral votes. That is actually representative of a person. That person actually physically makes the vote of the electorate. The Supreme, and during the last election,
You mean presidential election?
presidential,
Okay, that was in December of 2016, is that correct?
correct.
Right.
Well, November was the election, 16 is, December is.
So they had like, I think they had 60 days or something for the electoral college to actually
Yes.
confirm it.
So some of these electors wanted to, like, if they're favored for Trump, they wanted to say, okay, damn the people, I'm gonna vote for Clinton on behalf of y'all. That is called a faithless elector.
Right.
The Supreme Court said, no, that's not gonna happen. That's against the will of the people. If that state said Trump, you better go down and put in Trump. If you don't, you go get jail time, fine, whatever.
Can they overturn it though?
Can who overturn it?
If the elector is a faithless elector, yeah, he goes to jail, but will it be overturned?
No, it's not going to be overturned. This ruling says it won't be overturned. You cannot do that. You have to go what the state says.
So I'm just thinking if someone feels so strongly
Then you should be
that they would be willing to go to jail. So my question is, if they feel so strongly about it and they go to jail, will that decision be overturned, or are we stuck with whoever this faithful elector?
No, that faithful elector is no longer, and it's out. Which now the states, instead of electoral college, they're going with the popular vote. Whoever is the popular vote, they go with that. So that eliminates that kind of rogue, just somebody just being a renegade. So that's going to change the upcoming election. So people won't be playing the maverick, so to speak.
Right.
What's your thoughts on? Any more thoughts on that, or?
No, I'm just hearing about it for the first time, so I'm trying to see if I can find something. on
Okay.
it.
Well, let me ask you this: should that person go on his own and be a faithless elector, or should the will of the people decide that vote?
I think, in my opinion, I think it should always be the will of the people.
Okay.
I mean, no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
Do the electors have to take an oath before they become an elector to
Yes.
uphold the will of the people?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So they would also be an oath breaker if they did it.
correct.
Okay.
So we didn't have that problem. We only had that problem maybe once in the history of the electoral college, and this election, which was very controversial, some people decided to go their own way.
So wasn't the electoral college put in place to keep people like Trump out?
Yes.
So to keep tyrants
Yes.
out and
Yes. But that's was, it was on paper, the intent, but it wasn't, the way he got there.
Right.
No one knew. Well, people knew, but there was no litigation for it.
Right.
So
So do you think there should be a much more thorough vetting process from the Senate before a person can be on the ballot?
no,
No? Why not? You do it
because
for everyone else. Everybody in the administration goes through it. Why can't the president?
well, that's because after the president, sort of vets them, then they go through that process.
So that's hoping that the president, look all the people he had on his team.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm going back, because I've been thinking about this for a while.
Okay.
Even more so since the 2016 election.
Uh-huh.
How does a person, because you remember in the, was it the 2012 election when, what's the guy, 999, and people like
Herman
that?
Cain.
Yeah, all those
Godfather's Pizza.
people were just
Get well, Herman
jumping
Cain.
in.
Get well.
Yeah, I hope he gets well, but there were people just jumping in, like you got Kanye now talking about it.
Yeah.
These people should be properly vetted against a few things. One, experience.
Mm-hmm.
The other, mental capacity. I'm thinking Congress should put something in place for future elections. I just think that a person who's running, that way we know everybody
but-
there is qualified.
But what are the qualifications you would put out there? Because it could eventually become something along the lines of a poll tax, if you wanted to get all that.
We see what happens when you don't have that in place, right? Because if there was something in place, I doubt if Trump would have been able to be on the ballot.
I don't know. I think another argument you could have, though, is should we be limiting how many people end up on that stage? Because I think that Trump got it because there was a cajillion people up there, and he didn't have to get that many more votes in order to be the winner.
I think that a lot of people, in my opinion, I think were, who just didn't like Obama. I mean, obviously it was
And
enough
hated
to get voted
Hillary.
twice. And Hillary, right, because they saw her as being a continuation for him. And then a lot of other people who didn't vote a lot came out in droves. And then the media played a huge role.
Yes.
Was constantly pumping Trump. Even when he said stupid stuff, and that's something the media's always done when it came to Trump. Even when he ran in previous elections, they always put stuff out because he always wanted to say something, a gaffe.
Everything was newsworthy.
It was always newsworthy. So that right there, so he got a lot of free publicity. Then when the election came, well, just before the election, a couple things happened. We all know we all were there. One of the things that happened was there was a lot of talk that Hillary's going to win. She's going to win. And then there are some places that she didn't go, that she should have gone,
Yeah.
the last hours. And then there was the email thing that came out by the Attorney General. Just, 10 days, 14 days before the election.
Yeah.
All of that hurt her chances. But I think the biggest thing was the lack of turnout, which I think will be different.
See, well, this is where I disagree about Senate, vetting, because basically you're picking winners. You're picking winners.
Are you?
Because
I think it depends on who's in the Senate.
Yeah, because right now,
Yeah.
there's it's a two-party system in the Senate. It's not
There should be a
necessarily.
committee.
But who decides that?
I mean, they develop committees all the time in the Senate and in the House.
Yeah,
They develop committees based on certain circumstances.
but now it's become,
So
where
polarized.
you prop people up, and who says how many people could run? At least right now, you have those qualifications, and you can run. You may not have the funds, you may not have the reach, but you're allowed to run, and it's up to the will of the people to decide to whoever. The political parties is their influence, their money is what props up these people.
So what's to say that if he was still alive and out of jail, Charles Manson, what if he decided to run? He's a popular guy.
Well, he's a felon.
So that disqualifies you. So there is a disqualification.
There's qualifications.
Okay.
Not in every state, though, right? Could he have voted in California?
You mean as a voter, or you mean as somebody running for
As
president?
someone running for president, do you have to not be a felon?
I believe in some qualifications. I think
There is a
there's
qualification.
that you can't be.
I didn't think there was any qualification other than being
The
able to
age.
afford.
No, you have
Well,
to
there's
be. No,
age.
you have to be over 35.
Well, that, okay, we
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
You gotta be over 35, you gotta be a US citizen, have
Citizen.
been born in the
Yes.
United States, and a few things, but when it gets down to those other ones, like, can you be a felon? Can you be prosecuted under federal indictment? Because wasn't Trump still under federal indictment in certain cases? I mean, can these be disqualifiers? You know, if they went through all this stuff just to prove, well, at least he did, went through all this stuff trying to prove that Obama was a citizen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but nobody's looking at him. He is a diversion.
Yeah.
You know, he did everything to take the attention off of him and put it on Obama at the time, which didn't matter because he's already president. It's not like they're gonna boot him out. But, you know, it's just, he's the devil. Master of deception. You know?
Well, he is bringing up this question. Should there be more like roadblocks?
Yep.
Mhm.
But my counter to, instead of trying to vet a president, I feel voting should be mandatory.
I would say.
I feel that there should be a ranked choice. A ranked choice meaning like you have these people on the ballot, you pick your 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and then the higher percentage of ones get in. I mean, they win. So it still gives a chance. It may not be your first choice, but it's still somebody that could be considered instead of winner take all.
Well, didn't they do that at one point when they were choosing, because before, I mean, every president wasn't appointing a vice president.
Mm-hmm.
There was the one and number 2 automatically became vice president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was already in place. Did that change before Reagan?
I don't
Just
know.
before Reagan? I remember just seeing something about that recently. So, I mean, because, was it Mondale?
You mean Mondale? And,
Mondale ran on a ticket. Okay.
Okay, yeah, he ran on ticket.
So, but it was, I forgot who it was.
It was that recent?
It was within the last 60 years.
It was Mondale. Mondale was a vice president of somebody. He was on the ticket. I couldn't remember.
George H.
He
W.
was-
Bush?
No.
Was it Carter Mondale?
It was
And then
Carter
Mondale
Mondale.
Carter
Ferraro.
Mondale.
Yeah,
And then Mondale
Ferraro,
Ferraro.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
picked Ferraro.
Right.
Yeah.
He picked her.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it was Nixon or Johnson.
You're going way too bad.
Nixon was Ford. Nixon and Ford?
Yep, Nixon and Ford. Well, not the first one. His first one was
Goldwater? No.
the guy that got in Maryland. He was a senator in Maryland, got picked up on tax evasion, something like that.
Mhm.
So his first
A
term,
politician, a crook.
he
Wow.
was a senator, and
Oh.
he didn't run the second time. Actually, he resigned,
Yeah.
and then of course Nixon
Yeah.
pardoned.
Well, going back, I just believe that it shouldn't be like, okay, well, take for example the Democratic or even the Republican one of this 2016. You had 16 choices. Trump got through most of that with 22% of the vote
Right.
on average,
Right.
because there were so many people.
Well, the
out
rest
there.
of them didn't get that many.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, well, how did Trump was getting all the attention. Trump was getting all the attention.
But do you not think if there had only been like 4 people on stage, that everyone would have seen what an idiot he was?
I think that he still would have won.
I don't think he would
No,
have gotten the
I don't
momentum
think
he
so.
got.
You
If
don't
there
think so?
I
were,
don't think so.
I think if
because
there were only 4 people on stage, I think somebody would have wiped the stage.
there would have
clean
been
with
more
them.
focus on the other candidates.
Yeah,
Like,
and on the issues. I think I think that the media
But
would have
it
been
narrowed
forced.
down to the final few.
but
And
no,
still,
but it took a long time for that to happen.
so he's saying people just said, well, forget it, I'm gonna vote for Trump.
Well,
I think
no,
it was
they
fatigue.
they were just so much. I went and saw like 10 different debates, even the lower tier ones where they had Lindsey Graham and then Chris Christie decided to come up on top, and then like people won states and then didn't, because remember Chris Christie won the
Wasn't
second
the boss
state.
on that ticket as well? She was on the
No,
panel?
no,
She wasn't running for
no,
president?
No,
that
it
was
was, what was
Carly
it?
Farina.
That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But Chris Christie won the second primary, so and look where he's now. So there were just so
Was Romney
many.
on the ticket?
No,
Romney wasn't.
no, he was
the
not.
Senate. He's running for Senate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was just so many candidates on there. If there was some kind of ranked choice, people wouldn't have. He wouldn't have squeaked by. He wouldn't have squeaked by the first month.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Because he only gained steam until after the when he started insulting Rubio, and then when he started the battle with Ted Cruz,
Okay.
and then Ted Cruz became the bootlicker. But here, no there.
Okay.
Now, any other question about the Supreme Court? You know, is there anything that you would like to talk about? Just, okay, all right. Moving on to education. Education. So, just recently, this past week, Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education,
Her
and Donald Trump said that we want to start schools on time. They've been at home. As you know, schools ended early, or closed early due to the coronavirus. So, and some schools barely made it through the season by doing remote learning.
Yep.
Of course, a lot of parents were very stressed out about that situation. But now, the administration wants schools to go on time. They really don't have any guidelines. The CDC did bring out some guidelines to how to be safe during the opening, but the president said it's too expensive and too restrictive. But we still want to open up the schools. Thoughts? Anybody? Patricia? You're an educator.
I am. I guess my thing is, it's as if they're holding the kids as pawns. We're looking at life, you know, and what is his reasoning? Their reasoning to start school on time? Is it because there was a loss of school the past few months, or is it because you want the parents to go to work, or is it because you want the teachers to be babysitters? You know, but it's not their job to say these kids are pawns and we're going to hold this against you if you do not do what we want you to do. I mean, they can't hold federal funds as far as saying we're going to take away all the money that you receive. I mean, as it is now, I'll just give a behind the scenes a little bit. In some schools, each student is worth $2,000 a day. So they make sure the kids are at school. If they're not at school, we're calling.
Now, what do you mean $2,000 a day?
A seat.
How they budget.
How they budget? Okay.
Each child is worth about $2,000 in schools that receive federal funds.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, those are schools that are not funded by the community because the community doesn't have a PTA, or the taxes that's coming in is not enough to support the school.
Right.
So the federal government comes in and they pay them $2,000 a child. So that's why they get phone calls stating, hey, where's your child? Why aren't they in school? We're going to find you if you're not in school. You have to go to court, blah, 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 because that's money that's being lost. That's revenue.
So that's truants, right?
It turns to truancy after so many absences, and I think it's only like maybe 15.
Mm-hmm.
But if a student is not there for 15 straight days, they automatically drop them because they can put someone else in that seat. But
so if you're, I mean, now everybody, you know, what about the kids? But as an educator,
mm-hmm.
you know, if I'm in, you know, my final years as an educator, and I know, well, I could be in my 50s, so I'm a high risk candidate, and I could have, you know, I could be diabetic. Do I want to show up in school?
No. I know several educators that have asthma, that are diabetics, that have high blood pressure, that have all kind of underlying ailments that could make them susceptible to this virus that's going around. And then you have no idea where these kids been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think like I've heard, you know, some superintendents across the country, they need to follow what the healthcare workers are saying in their jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they need to be following. That's what the federal government needs to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the federal government's saying keep these places closed, and they should keep them closed. The president the secretary, they can all do all kinds of threats. You
I
know,
mean, they were trying to withhold funding, which they have no power.
I mean, that's a threat, right? They have no power, so it's a threat. It's a scare tactic.
Yeah.
You know, and I would stand firm. You know, just like when some of these states where Trump was saying that, with some of these states were talking about not reopening the businesses and stuff like that, and he was threatening to do something.
Mhm.
But bottom line is, he can't. He's trying to threaten the governors, saying, especially the Democratic governors, like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to open up this, you know, the businesses, do this and that, remove some of the mandates that they had. You know, he's a dictator.
Well, before I give my chime in, Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this decision? I mean, I know you don't have any kids in the game, but
No kids in the game, but I don't think they should be forced to go back to school. We really don't have enough information. We're still learning about COVID.
Yeah.
We really don't know enough about how it is affecting children, and part of the reason why is because all along children have been pretty much protected from it.
Mhm.
You know, schools shut down, businesses shut down, kids are staying home. A lot of grown-ups are having to go out and, you know, keep working because they're essential workers, but they're making it, you know, a point, if they're going home to kids, making sure that they're cleaned up and that they're sanitized before they get home. So
Yeah.
we really don't know the effects. We do know that some kids that have had COVID are ending up with that Kawasaki-like
Kawasaki
disease,
disease, yeah.
but not enough kids have actually been affected. And Betsy DeVos has said, we could lose 0.02%. Well, the number is 14,000. So which one's going to stand in line and say, oh, I'll give up my kid?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
0.02% doesn't sound like a lot until it's your kid.
Right.
And, you know, I think a lot of people aren't thinking about that.
you know, and in reality, you know, if you want schools to open, you should go to bat. Either, you know, approve a budget for the education, or, you know, not lobby, encourage Congress to pass more funding for the schools. Currently in the CARES Act, they gave $13 billion, which,
But where did that money go?
yeah, there's a couple of states trying to sue DeVos
Yeah.
on where that money's went to. But, you know, you got I'm sorry.
Well, I have a question too then. Like, if Congress is going to give schools more money, as an educator,
Mm-hmm.
what would you want to see done that would get you to go feel confident about going back to school? Is there anything outside of having a vaccine?
Honestly, and from the educators that I spoke with, there's nothing you can do at this moment in time to make us feel confident. Putting us in plastic, in HVAC uniforms and having plastic around the kids, that's not gonna make me feel safe. Because I'm still out here exposed.
So you prefer that money to go to healthcare or
Right.
testing,
Yes.
proper testing
Yes.
for everyone, just like they do
There-
immunizations every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially now in this climate.
Yeah,
where-
I mean, because honestly, we don't know how we're transmitting it.
So I got a question. I mean, on the same topic, but kind of, you know, around this thing around the administration, current administration. Was there talk at one point that Trump is holding back funds for jurisdictions to get proper testing? Because I heard some states saying that we're still waiting for Trump to provide the funding for us to get the testing and to test kits and all this other type of stuff. And there was a time they were talking about respiration, now they're talking about testing, which is the big thing. That's when they were talking about doing the contact tracing and all that stuff, which I think is crucial before you open any school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what's up with that?
You mean the national supply?
Yes.
As far as I recall, they left it up to the governors of each state
Okay, the
to
government's gonna ask
acquire
them,
to
the federal
acquire.
government.
Yeah, they told them you need to do what you can to acquire.
So that's why the governor of Maryland, who has a wife that is Asian, Korean,
Yes.
and he was automatically getting supplies directly from Korea for the state of Maryland,
Mhm.
his testing done
With-
through her channel.
Yep. While secretly trying to obtain it
Right.
before, because there was a story that the federal government was actually seizing it for themselves.
Right.
Right.
What sense was that? And we a couple of days ago, I have a friend in Arizona. He works for a hospital chain, and he was trying to obtain PPE for several hospital groups.
Right.
And the way he described the effort it took him to obtain that for just even private hospitals was Herculean.
Mm.
So I don't have any confidence that the schools who are already underfunded, most of them, will attain that PPE in time in what, a month?
Less than that.
Yeah, yeah, because teachers have to come early.
Teachers go back to the end of July, beginning of August.
Yeah, and you guys have to be trained on the new procedures, correct?
Procedures have to be put in place.
Yes.
I mean,
We should have started back in June. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we received emails, but the emails keep saying, this is a live document, which means
It
it's
can
going to change.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it will continually change because the state is trying to figure out what the federal government's doing. The federal government's trying to figure out, well, we want to take funds. So the state, they're having to do whatever, it is that's needed, and then the districts are doing what's needed for their particular area. Because right now I'm involved with 2 districts, and each district has something different.
Yeah. So if I'm a parent, actually I am a parent, and I
Actually,
say,
you're the minority in this room.
Yeah.
and I say that I don't want to bring my kid to school,
Right.
and I have, money in the bank, and say, well, I'm gonna transfer my kid to a school that doesn't have to show up in class, that they can do it online. What happens to the schools then?
That's what they're trying to figure out. How can they still get school funding when students or the parents are choosing not to have their child at school? How are they still going to receive that $2,000? Well, and that also depends on if you're in a school that's federally funded. There are some schools that are not federally funded.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to several of those parents, and they're saying what they're going to do, they're not sending their kids to school. They said it's more of a burden, but they want to protect their family. They're actually hiring teachers to come into their home and tutor their kids.
I saw that,
Yeah.
where actually groups of parents are getting together and they're looking for a teacher to
Yeah.
teach 5 kindergarten age
Yes.
kids. And I mean, and that
All
sounds like
ages.
it could totally change, the job
It is.
view for teachers. I mean, you could go private from a public school. I think that's an opportunity.
And before, it was, you could do that, but you would have to do it overseas,
Mm-hmm.
where it's worth actually leaving a public school or leaving, a school district, period. But now, that's gonna be a job that you may want to do.
Yeah.
Because these
But then
parents
what
are going to pay.
happens to the parents that can't pay? And it
Exactly.
sounds like all of this boils down to is
The haves and have-nots.
yeah, and Trump and Nancy, they basically just want kids back in school and teachers teaching so parents can go back to work so that
Yes.
businesses can survive. And it sounds like ultimately people need daycare. That's really
Yes.
what it boils down to.
Exactly.
And that seems like that's what the real problem
And
is.
you're creating a brain drain, where kids, they're only going to be limited to so much, and it's whatever their environment is, and if their environment is so limited, what's that going to lead to?
Yes.
Another vicious cycle.
Yes.
But at the same time, you still have good school systems and bad school systems, and so it's like none of this is really solving anything, no matter what. I mean, even if they do go back to school, if it's not a good school system, if it's a crappy school and it's not getting any funds anyway, none of that's going to change.
Well,
They're just going to get sick now.
well, the COVID is very much exacerbated everything. So, what you just said is going to be 10 times worse.
Well, going back to your original question,
Okay.
why is Trump and Betsy DeVos doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Because they trying to establish a sense of normalcy before this election.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about politics.
Yeah.
It's not about whether people are going to get sick, who's going to get funding, whatever it's going to take to make things like we're back to normal.
Yeah.
So they can run on something, or at least he can run on something in these debates, getting close to the election. Hey, there was a problem before, I came in, I fixed it, boom, boom, boom,
Boom,
boom.
boom, boom.
Now we're having a surge. I don't know how you're going to talk this one up. But here, unemployment's gone from 14 point something, it's gone down in 2 months to 11.1%. Look at what I've done.
Yeah.
And he can say I ran a campaign, and I've offered these people, I've talked to the Senate and Congress, and I've pushed this new stimulus package, which still hasn't come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that happens, he's going to take credit for. That's why I feel that the opposition, the Democrats, need to get ahead of it.
Yes.
They need to really get ahead of this thing because he's gonna take everything that happens, even if it's a negative thing. Well, I couldn't get it done because Congress wouldn't allow certain things to happen. They couldn't agree on this and that and blah, blah. First of all, Secretary of State cannot decide on how much money is going to the states right now.
No.
You know, but you can put that out there and people will hear it and people will believe it and think just like they believe everything else coming out of this administration.
Yeah.
So, you know, anyway.
Well, no, but you know, I understand it. Also, it's the Secretary of Education's job to put out a plan.
She ain't got no plan.
And she got no plan. She went on what CNN
Chris
program
Wallace.
this morning and said,
And on Fox.
yeah, and
She
said
was all
I don't got
over.
no plan.
Right.
You know, if something goes wrong,
So it makes you wonder, what are they doing in office? This
Yeah.
thing took off in March.
Yeah.
yes,
You know-
what did he do all this time?
Yeah, and then schools were closed
Nothing.
in March, right?
They did
Yeah.
nothing, because we had to come up with our own plans.
Yeah.
And
So-
we were doing it just, okay, this is what I think will work, it didn't work. Okay, I think this will work, didn't work.
Yep.
And even in March, wasn't Trump still saying that
He
it
was-
was a
Oh, yeah,
hoax?
he was saying
Yeah,
it
there
was
was
a
a
hoax.
hoax, and it was gonna miraculously disappear.
Disappeared.
Right.
And
Yes.
he's still kind of saying that.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's hoping,
yes.
and the economy will bounce back.
Well, including that, you know, think about let's talk about the athletic response to this in schools, high schools.
Oh,
You know, football's coming up,
Yep.
and you know, some school districts are saying, no, you're gonna skip football. Seriously.
and they can do that
Yeah.
for a year. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because football season just gonna be, they only miss 1 year. Hopefully this time next year things will be better. We had this conversation recently at looking at professional,
Hmm.
you know, professional teams, professional, like football and hockey and basketball.
NFL,
Yeah. So we know football is gonna happen.
Do we?
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah,
because of the contracts they paid off.
because of the contracts they paid off. So it's going to happen. They're taking every precaution they can for the players and for the stadiums.
Yeah.
So that's already been written.
We're gonna
There's
see a
policy
bunch
in
of
place.
bangs out on the field with the with the mask and everything else.
The people who are not allowed to wear masks on the field are the players and coaches.
Yeah.
Everyone else, they can be no press out there, you know, so they can be up in the stands taking pictures. You know what I mean? But they can't be on the ground. So they're doing everything they can. You see what's happening. Every player is getting tested weekly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're spending a lot of money because it's worth. They don't get no money back for one. They don't want to lose money. They're
Yeah.
gonna lose money anyway.
Uh-huh.
But I think keeping it going, keeping momentum going, will help them next year as well when things are better, back to normal. But some of these other ones can afford to say we can take a year off.
Well, those contracts are
They're fluid.
they're guaranteed. Like NBA,
Oh yeah, yeah.
baseball,
The
they're
professionals.
guaranteed. Yeah. NFL is year to year.
Right.
No matter how Mahomes got a $500 million contract, it's still a year-to-year contract.
So the year to year.
You know, that's how the
And they got
NFL.
2 left before you even start that. But anyway,
Yes.
those are the subject.
But anyway, but in the high school and college divisions,
Right.
just this past week, college teams said, well, the Ivy League said, we're not playing any fall sports.
They shouldn't. If the schools are closed, colleges are closed. Are colleges going to be closed? That's the
Yes,
question.
Yeah.
they're all
Okay.
online.
If colleges and high schools are closed, there should be no sports. I mean, why? It's kind of defeating the purpose.
No,
You know,
well,
you're still bringing people, cross-contamination people who could be possibly, harming other people, then bringing it home. No. And then if you're not, you're going to take it to the dorms and wherever you are in college. I think they should shut everything down. You
they
know?
think they do, but everything drives around.
They're looking
with
at
politics
revenue.
is of money.
Yeah.
So in the terms of
But colleges are already, they haven't dropped their tuition just because it's offline. They're still getting that money.
yeah,
Um,
but they're losing the housing dollars
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because housing, they overcharge for housing,
Right.
No, yeah, definitely.
so they're losing that.
They got enough endowment money.
Yeah.
Correct.
well, since Texas is looking to cancel high school football
For the year.
for the year.
Right.
Blasphemy.
Yes.
They should.
Yes.
They really should.
They should. But like I said, it's going to affect their funding and everything else under the sun. We're in a holding pattern. So
I mean, health comes first.
health comes first. Yeah, I
Right.
totally believe that.
So,
And some of these athletes got their own coaches anyway, so they'll figure it out.
yeah,
Um,
they say train. Well, some of these, one's going to impact those folks who were looking for scholarships, getting the recognition their senior year,
Mhm.
or their junior year, and they're looking for people to come out and watch it. They may not have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So that right there is going to impact, but that's a smaller percentage than majority of the kids, you know, in the school that has 15,000 student body and half of them contaminated because of one person
Yeah.
or 3 people.
Yeah.
I think it's best to just shut them down.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's only 1 year. It's only 1 year.
Agreed. And still speaking of education, so ICE put out a ruling, immigration, the immigration cops. They said to immigrants who go to colleges, private and public, they made out a rule that said, coming this fall when school opens, if you don't attend an in-person, like you don't sit down for class, you got to get out of the country.
Right. For the visas.
Yes, or transfer to a different school that does. So they're in the country legally, but they're making them illegal if they decide to stay with the college. And some colleges do not have the actual, you know, their internship could be involved with that school.
Right.
And they can't, you know, they can't do it any other place. So anybody got any thoughts on that? You know.
So at my job, we've actually got a couple of interns that work there, and one of them goes to UNT, and she mentioned that their student government is getting all over, you know, the president of the university saying, you know, hey, you can't do this. You need to figure out a way to make something in person or come up with some sort of in person. You know, and the presidents have to understand this too, because, you know, this tuition, that's a huge amount of revenue, because if you're international, you're paying out of state. You're not getting in-state tuition. You gotta have a dorm. You gotta have the meal plan. I mean, that's a lot of money that they're losing right there.
So in other words, if I'm in state at UNT, I pay $2,000 a semester. But if I'm out of state tuition, a foreign student, I pay $10,000, regardless if I borrowed it or if it's coming out of my pocket.
Right.
So, you know.
So it is in the best interest of the universities to figure out how to make it work for the international students. But that said, a lot of these smaller universities, they might not have the means to get that figured out.
You know, I'm not even in that area, but it would make sense that even if they said, okay, students, you have to come into classroom for an hour to show up.
Yeah.
To tell the federal government that we are having you come to class.
Yeah. Come to a lab.
Come to a lab and be isolated 6 feet away, come in a staggered time zone a day, and then leave. And then the rest of the time of the day you're online. So, I mean, there's ways to do it.
There is, but here's I don't know the whole ICE, you know, language. But I know that schools have to report to ICE that they actually have classes in class learning. So they have to at least put it in there. So if they want to play that game.
But they didn't put no minimums on there. I mean, like I said, you can still do the same thing. You can have a class for an hour. You can have an abbreviated classroom where you can have 6 people opposed to 12 or 15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can do that and do it at staggered times of the day that everybody's not clumped at the same time. The rest of it's online.
But what if you have a class? Okay, what if there's a class?
Right.
You know, not all classes, because you got to convince the teachers to show up in these classes.
Or
to
you
make
can
it just.
You can have a TV monitor,
Yep.
some type of monitor,
Yep.
and the teacher is virtual.
Yep.
Or a self-directed lab.
Yeah.
Where you have a syllabus and a list
Yep.
of assignments that you have to perform.
That's it.
Now, if I'm paying good money, of course I want to stay in here. So do I throw away my money to a class that it doesn't benefit me, so I can just stay?
Well, you can have that lab connected to some particular class that's needed.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, because you know a lot of classes need labs, but you just it's all in the verbiage. What are you saying? What are you calling this class?
Yeah.
It's the same class, but this is the part of it where you do the work.
And there have been great online education systems since before COVID. I mean, people have been getting Ivy League educations online for quite a while. So,
I have no.
I mean, it's just maybe it's just time to step up the game.
Yeah.
Because even when I was studying for an MBA, I went in every Saturday.
Yeah.
From 8:30 to 12.
Yeah.
You know, and then that slowed up, but I was in there. The rest of the time I was online.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's many ways they can do it.
Yeah.
And I know that the universities have options that they can exercise,
Okay.
just to appease both sides, both the federal government and the students.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they'll come on something.
I do think the housing's going to be a challenge, though,
It is. It is.
because you're going to have to be able to space people out. There's not going to be a roommate situation, and you're also, I mean, they could end up being just like beds of COVID. You know, these dorms. If one person gets it, it spreads like wildfire, and then you got to feed them. So you're still having to call staff in.
You know, like you said, there's the 6 feet rule.
Yeah, yeah.
You can still do that. If people have to be isolated, it's like if we travel outside of Texas, they're saying that they're going to hold us in a room for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? I don't know, but you can limit movement.
Yeah.
You know, through the halls. You can do. There's no gathering. You can't gather here. You can't be here and talk and have a conversation. You want to do study, you got to do it online through FaceTime, whatever you want to do. Or you can do it with separations. You know,
Yeah.
there's enough rooms, you can be in different parts of the room where you can still study together. To me, this is not an impossible task.
Not
It's just a
impossible.
change.
All right.
So it is a change, but and this might be a whole other subject. But how much do you trust college age kids to follow those rules?
They had mono. They still get mono.
Because,
Right.
well, you know,
Right.
look at Memorial Day weekend, look at 4th of July weekend, look at all the people, you know, going out to bars and, you know, getting the Rona. So how much do we trust them? I hate to say it, I hate to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but seriously.
Yeah. Well, if you are a student and watching us right now, please call us at 203-802-5694. but yeah, you can't, I mean, kids are kids, you know.
I mean, how they enforce everything else? I mean, there's a level of enforcement. You know, they're young people. They're no longer kids to us.
They're young
but
adults.
they're young people. They're at least 18 years old.
Yeah.
And so they have to make conscious decisions about their own health. I would think, and yeah, they go into bars and stuff like that. That's leisure time.
Yeah. Now there are students who have full-grown families.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, that's going to be another issue.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of problems just with no
And I
real
think
guidance.
it's changed. I think everything is solutionable. Has a solution. There's a solution for everything that we're talking about.
Yeah.
If the right decisions are being made. You know, when people got to come together and, like Patricia said, and talk about policy, create policies, and then there's enforcement of policies.
Right.
All this stuff is doable stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So.
All right. Okay. Before you bring up another topic, is there any topic that's burning that's currently on your mind that you would like to talk about?
Well, you may touch on it, but I'm thinking of Trump.
Yeah, Trump is everywhere. Trump is all of us.
That guy.
In
That
us.
guy.
You breathe in Trump, you hear Trump, you hear Trump.
Occupying the White House.
Yes.
Before we get into
Okay.
more Trump,
Gotcha.
Bill Barr has been pushing
Yes.
executions,
Yep.
federal executions. So now, if you're on death row, and federally speaking, he can pull the plug. Are we still? Are you in favor of executions, public or private? Doesn't matter.
I am not for executions at all.
Mm-hmm.
I am totally against it. Because that's the liberal side of me. I'm not for. I don't know what it solves.
Uh-huh.
You know, it doesn't deter crime.
Yeah.
It's been tested for decades and decades and decades. It's a state mandated in federal government, of course, for certain crimes and for certain crimes. I just don't know. I mean, I think that it's really personal to me. I mean, I've never known anybody who's ever been on death row. But I just don't understand why the states or the federal government is legally allowed to kill someone because of a crime when, you know, I think that punishment shouldn't be death.
Even if they, you know,
Rape the kid,
rapes,
killed the pregnant
kids
woman.
pregnant, somebody, little kid in front of
Those
you.
most severe cases, I still don't believe in death penalty.
Okay.
I think there's another option.
All right. Anybody still that same way, or?
So you believe in rehabilitation?
You know, some people probably just can't be rehabilitated. Those people probably should be in a mental institution as well as prison. But I think that I believe in punishment, not capital punishment. I believe in isolation. I believe the person should be in isolation where they have to just deal with whatever they dealt with, and then if they're a psychopath or sociopath, they won't feel it anyway. But what can you do?
Well, we've had isolation here, and we've seen how nutty people can be.
Right.
Now, I don't know if there is a limit on isolation for me. Like, I can't put somebody in isolation for a month because it won't help them. It won't rehabilitate them. It just make them be more crazy.
Could be. Did you keep them
See, I'm not for that. See,
But about 1 hour a day for the next 70 years, whatever time it takes for them to
I
pass
mean,
away.
if you're gonna put somebody in isolation, at least give them some kind of meditative thing or some kind of program. You can't put them in the dark or put them in,
You're giving them a bed, you're giving them whatever health care that comes up, and you're giving them food, and that's enough. And you give them some recreation.
Well, the penal system, isn't it supposed to be about rehabilitation anyway?
It's gone beyond that.
I mean, it's not rehabilitating
It's
anybody,
not.
but.
I mean, other countries have rehabilitated people.
Right.
But,
Well, Western European countries probably, but I don't know too many others outside of that.
well, some people just straight up kill them. So,
Right, they just
you
get
know,
rid of them.
yeah, I'm against life sentences, regardless of who you are.
Mm.
But with that said, I feel that there needs to be a program that supports rehabilitation.
But that's going to require dollars,
Yeah,
Um,
it costs us more to put them away.
I mean, it's costing them to house that person in the prison system, yes. But the other economic value is that you're creating jobs. That sounds crazy. Like, how does that even up? Well, you're creating jobs in those communities, you know what I'm saying? So, a lot of these prisons are in these places, rural places, where it's creating jobs for those people in those areas. And there's other, not just for guards, but there's also the people who do the healthcare. And there's other, there's other things that are happening in law enforcement as well. So, I mean, I think there are other ways.
And they're doing the bare minimum though.
Well, that's because they're run by for-profit.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they're gonna feed them the bare minimum. They're gonna give them the bare minimum care, the bare minimum, rehabilitation. So
When I invoice that agency,
Yeah.
whatever state, federal, whatever it is, I'm gonna invoice them for a profit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if I can spend less to manage this contract, then I'm gonna do that. But that's like with every contract.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
Okay, so should we still have private prisons? I mean,
I don't believe in private prisons.
No.
yeah, because
I don't agree with that.
Yes.
Totally wrong.
Because just because you're in prison, it doesn't mean that you should be cut off by your family if you can't afford to pay $4 a minute for a phone call. That's taking advantage of the situation. I don't think that is right. Because how can you even think you're going to rehabilitate somebody if they can't even?
if they're being profit.
If they're going to be a profit margin, but if they can't even have contact with the people that would help them when they finally get out. If they get out. Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
This table is diverse. Well, not too diverse. Well, you're for pro-death.
No.
He's
No,
pro-life.
I'm not switching. I'm not
He's
drunk.
Pro-life.
I'm pro-life for life. I'm really pro-life there. Yes, and I think I think there should be some kind of punishment, and there should be a plan to figure out what needs to be done for this person to be released. Even if they have 25 years, there should be a plan to see if we can release him in 10. If based on what he does with the plan that's out there.
So I can agree with you on that. I
Mhm.
think that there are too many people in the system for us to do that efficiently.
Mhm.
But again, that's a whole nother problem. There are too many people in the system. There are
Right.
people in the system, there are people in prison that should not be in prison. And so that's a whole nother subject right there. It's just how unfair the prosecutorial system is, that people go to jail that shouldn't be. Like
Yeah.
you or I might go to jail, for having a joint, whereas someone else might barely get a slap on the wrist, or the cop will pocket it and take that kid home.
So.
I remember when marijuana became legal in D.C.
Mhm.
Right, and there were so many people who were in prison for low amounts of marijuana possession.
Mhm.
Those people are free now.
Yeah.
They were released. They were released on some type of probation. But once that probation is done, they're done. I mean, they're done.
Is their record expunged? Because
That I don't know.
that should not hold them up. And one of the reasons why people really can't get rehabilitated when they get out is they can't get a job because they've got that on the record.
Possession of marijuana is quite a bit.
Mhm.
If it's cocaine, it's something totally different. But for marijuana, you're carrying,
Yeah.
more than 2 ounces, which is enough you can buy from any of those little shops, boutiques in DC.
Mhm.
But whatever that is, I think that, like we were talking about refunding the police, defunding the police,
Yeah.
refunding the police and put the money in other areas, allocating it in community services and stuff like that, community officers. I think they should do the same thing with the prison systems. I think that some of that money should go towards rehabilitation centers outside of prison.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when they are getting released, because they are going to get released,
Yeah.
put it more in halfway houses so they can prepare them to be coming out. Since you don't believe in life sentences.
Yeah.
But what is a life sentence? A person can actually be let out of prison under a life sentence, because I think in some states it's a mandatory 25
20
years.
years.
Yeah, 25 years. Yeah.
And then after that, they're eligible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they're gonna be on the street anyway if they're of a certain health and certain age. So I mean, it's not that I'm against life sentences.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really only against one thing. That's capital punishment.
Punishment. Yeah.
So everything else is like there's room for discussion.
Okay. All right. That was, yeah. It's a deeper topic with prisons, and because you start thinking, how much should the feds control federal? I mean, there's federal prisons, but should they set the guidelines even for state and local
No.
prisons?
No, states should do that. Just
Okay.
like you don't want the government deciding on how kids should be educated in schools.
Yeah. States' rights, right?
Well, states' responsibilities.
Responsibility. Okay.
So you can be guilty and not responsible.
All right.
So I think in that particular situation they should be, But I think staying on that for 1 second, I think the issue is not necessarily what happens once they get to prison and how to get out. The issue is getting to prison.
Getting in prison.
I
Yeah.
think the justice system needs complete reformation.
Yeah.
It needs to be completely torn down and built back up.
So that's Congress's responsibility.
That's Congress on the federal side. The
Yeah.
state
Legislatures.
legislators have to decide. I mean, the federal government's already set the guidelines.
Yeah.
But what happens in the courtroom is what happens in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the change needs to take place. You got, this has been talked for a couple of decades now that, most of these district attorneys are pushing for plea bargains.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that was dangerous.
That's horrible for us,
Yeah.
blacks and minorities, because we don't have the money to pay an attorney.
Yeah.
They're not going to fight for us as hard. And then there's a shortage of these prosecutors out there. They go in and they stay for a couple of years to get their credentials, and they move on to private practice.
Mm.
But who can afford them? We can't.
No.
So the justice system has to be, there has to be something else, another way, where these people can afford proper justice.
Yeah.
But it makes you want. See, it's one of those situations I wouldn't want to be in when I have to decide. Because if I have to decide, I'm decide what I think is right. It's not going to be best for everybody else. It's a very complicated situation, because if a person is out here committing crimes, deliberately committing crimes, but they're not committing crimes where they're making a lot of money, they can afford an attorney. They're just committing crimes, just doing some dumb shit.
Yeah.
So, should those people be in jail and given that life sentence that you think they shouldn't have? Should they be given the death penalty based on the type of crimes they've committed? These ain't all rich folks. They can't always afford an attorney.
Yeah.
But so how do you get a fair trial? Or do you get them to plead out and they keep pleading out, keep pleading out, keep pleading
Plead
out?
out.
You know what I mean? And then there's the cost of court. I mean, it's
Wait, now I'm going to ask you, should plea bargains be even a thing? Should there even be a plea bargain? Should it literally go straight to trial?
I understand why there are plea bargains,
Mm-hmm.
because of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes there's enough evidence. You're saying, look, there's enough evidence against you, bro. We can work something out with you if you want to take this plea, take a lesser sentence. You know what I mean? So I understand why it's there, but it's gotten where it's become like almost a mandatory thing almost. you
Yeah,
know?
take curtain number 2. Yeah.
Right. That's going to always, anything's going to give a person a shortened sentence will always look more attractive. Especially when you're looking at the mandatory, or you're looking at 20 because you got so many felonies, committed the same felony within a certain amount of time, you automatically get a lot of time because of the statutes. But I just think that, I don't know, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Okay. Well, still dealing with federal law. This recent as Friday, our president decided to with clemency to
Great clemency
Stone.
to
Roger Stone, who was convicted by his peers on 7 felonies. Now,
Or the community sentence. He's not.
community sentence. So he was scheduled to go to jail this weekend.
He's still a felon.
He's still a felon.
Yeah.
He's still under the books. He's already been. Roger Stone asked for a trial. He got convicted. The people sent him to jail. My issue is, should the president or governors commute
No,
Nope.
not at all. I think you should take that away.
For anybody that they known to them.
Absolutely not. They should
I
not.
agree. I think it should be held up by the judges, and they want to take it to another court and versus still sitting in jail trying to fight it. But that's an appeals for. That's what the appeals for. So the person exhausted, they take it all to the Supreme Court if the court will allow it in. So other than that, no. I don't think a person, because what if a person gone through all the appeals and even to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court still said no, the president coming behind and say, okay, we'll let you go anyway, we'll pardon you. I think that's totally unfair.
So, commutations, they've been convicted and go to jail. Pardons, they have to admit that they are guilty and then freed.
And it's a verbal admission.
Yeah, it's a verbal admission. Commutations, you don't have to admit anything. You can still claim innocence.
You're just not going to jail.
You're just not
But
going
you
to
still
jail.
get your record.
Yes.
Right.
Now, if they take that out, because that's for most people, it's their last resort, who are truly innocent. Should there be something in place after that?
Like what?
I'm not sure, but if we take away commutations from the president or the governors,
Right.
so we still have people in jail who may or may not be guilty.
I mean, I think there are certain things, like there's certain organizations that got some people out of jail that's been given life sentences and turn out the evidence, like for rape cases. The DNA has cleared a lot of people.
Yeah.
Those situations, it's kind of automatic.
Yeah, it's automatic. It doesn't fall under their purview.
I just, I think it's unfair that just because you know a person, the president knows a person, that they should have more opportunity how many people were affected by the crimes he committed?
Yeah.
And how many people are sitting in jail and they're also worried about getting COVID?
Absolutely.
They want to send our kids back to school, but they want to get him out because they're scared that he's going to get COVID. That's not right.
No.
And that on its own is no reason
Well,
for
he
him
has
to
the
be
money to buy that type of defense too, to represent him.
Yes.
So that's another injustice in the system.
But I believe commutations should stay there. But I think if you're governor or president, you should not have any relationship to that person whatsoever.
But they can always lie and say they don't.
Well,
so how do you prove that?
it's a step. I mean, there should be a vetting process. And, if there's any kind of connection, I mean, if there is a connection, then, stuff keeps falling through the cracks.
Do you really think that Trump would actually admit, if he knew that law was there,
that's
he would admit that, oh yeah, this person's a friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time.
No. See, that's the thing.
I think he'd
That's
do
the
it
thing.
shamelessly. He's already been doing it shamelessly.
Well, I still think that there was something preventing him from doing what he did. He would have gone the opposite direction. I don't think he would be honest enough to admit he wouldn't do it because he wouldn't be allowed to commute the guy anyway.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that it takes his power away from commuting friends, because you could look, the internet is undefeated.
Well, but it's also Wikipedia where everybody can put their own stuff out there too.
And lie to say this is my friend anyway.
TMZ will find the truth.
Yeah, well, okay. But I think if you just eliminate, the power to commute, then you solve part of the problem. I just think that no governor or anybody should be able to commute anybody. Unless that person has gone through due process.
Mm-hmm.
If the person's gone through due process, and for some reason, these are rare cases when they look at it and say, regardless of the thing, when as far as the Supreme Court can only take so many cases at a time. But this person has been gone through everything. We got DNA, we got all this type of stuff to prove this person is. Then the Innocence Project would step in and represent them and say, hey, they plead the case. But I don't think it should be a governor or president, because that's a bias that all of us, 99% of us who don't know anybody in those positions, wouldn't have. We wouldn't have that advantage. It's a total disadvantage.
Well, the last administration pardoned and commuted over 2,000 inmates,
right?
Federal inmates.
But everyone does that before they leave. Matter of fact, when the Dutch section, all presidents commute people.
Yep.
I mean, not commute, they pardon.
Pardon.
I mean, but that's based on, there's a list and there's a process. There's a small little committee within the administration that's looking at all these cases and said, okay, and that's probably done a year or last 2 years of their term anyway. So, who are we going to have?
And it's true.
Yeah.
It's
it
truly
doesn't even get to
process.
him unless it's got teeth.
Huh?
It doesn't even get to the president unless it's got teeth.
Unless it got teeth.
Yeah.
So out of 2000, there was a lot of people probably in prison unjustly or whatever the case was, or maybe they should have been out. They've been in too long.
Yeah.
those situations, but those are those rare cases.
Okay.
2,000 compared to 6 million in prison,
Yeah.
that's a small percentage.
Yeah. Wow.
They should have let Charles Manson out there before he died.
For real?
For real?
Sirhan is still in the assassinator of Robert
Of
Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy.
No, I'm just
But I don't know about Manson.
Well-
Don't quote me on that one.
Well, you
I quote
basically were okay with Tim McVeigh staying alive, so that's right.
No, he's different. He's different.
Wait a minute.
He committed a
Is
federal
that the
crime.
exception?
He committed a federal crime. So did Sirhan too, right? Assassinated
Yeah.
senator. But it's different. Timothy McVeigh was he had other litigating circumstances that should have kept him in prison. Like he was a supremacist. He didn't like black folks.
So
You're trying to set off a race war?
so now we're getting into something, man. So we're talking about white supremacy.
Well, no, it's called the alt-right. The alt-right, not alt-right. The alt-right. That's the new group, the new KKK.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Who supported the guy that ran all those people down in Carolina. Remember?
Yeah.
The
Malcolm.
car that went through in Charlotte and knocked them people
Oh, yeah.
down.
Oh, yeah. Heather Heyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Rest in peace. There was a story that just came, which it involved the CIA and FBI. I think it was FBI, where they were discussing the problem of the agency to determine if a white supremacist should get the same type of treatment that international terrorists should have, like ISIS. So should the KKK be under the same rules as ISIS?
Well, that group has to be determined as a terrorist organization first, which the U.S. hasn't done yet.
Correct.
So yeah, if it did, then yeah, it would be.
But the problem is if they use the same rules, because if I'm a homegrown supporter of ISIS, if I even say I'm a supporter of ISIS, I can be locked up.
Right.
If the same rule applied to say and if they declared, as silly as this may sound, Black Lives Matter was a terrorist group, or this mythical Antifa. If I said I support Black Lives
Right.
Matter, then I could be jailed up based on the same
Well,
rules.
there's a criteria now,
Yeah.
which there wasn't in place, because had J. Edgar Hoover been here, he would have declared Black Lives Matter, which is not really an organization other than a
Right.
movement.
It's a movement.
Right.
Yeah.
The Black Panther was an organization. They were
Yeah.
also in a movement.
Yes.
He declared them public enemy number one. Nation of Islam, same thing. Played all these groups, and was the guy leader of that group, Muhammad, not Farrakhan, but Muhammad.
Yeah.
He was working with the FBI to say, hey, no, we're doing a good thing for people coming out of prisons, blah, blah. So he fought for that to stay off that list.
Mhm.
But then they declared Malcolm X one, when he went separate, and they kind of left him out there. So they called Martin Luther King. He called
Yeah,
Martin
yeah.
Luther King enemy of the nation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, I mean, bottom line, I think they need to. I mean, they already know which groups are causing terrorism. They need to make it, make a separate rule.
And because ISIS is known
Yeah.
as a terrorist group, if you're
Yeah.
saying you support that group, then you're considered a terrorist.
Terrorists, yeah. Now, I think our homegrown terrorist groups, they need to be said as terrorism, but they probably, based on the degree of how things turn out, there should be separate rules for that type of terrorist,
You saying domestic terrorists?
domestic terrorists.
I mean, there are people who've committed acts of terrorism
Mm-hmm.
here in the States, and this is an individual.
Yeah.
So they're not part of any group. So how would you classify those folks? I mean, because you got hate groups.
Yeah. hate groups,
So
yeah.
right now, if you go around killing transgender folks, and you're an individual, it's first it's a federal crime, for
Yeah.
one, because it's based on racism, but you're considered a terrorist.
Should it be based on the act, or should it be based on your verbal support of it? Because then you got First
I think the
Amendment
act,
laws.
I think the act. I mean, I can say I like a group, but I don't mean I'm necessarily supporting them. Supporting me, I'm allowing them to do certain things.
Yeah.
So that's support. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be illegal. But if I say, hey, I like Black Lives Matter, it's already been declared as a terrorist group, then you can't arrest me for that.
Yeah,
You can look at me and watch me and see what I
That's what I
do.
do,
But
yeah.
let's see your tax dollars, go ahead. Or my tax dollars.
agreed. Agreed. Wow.
All these opinions are subjective, not necessarily the opinions of KMWi-Media.
So another topic came in. We're real quick. It was announced that there was Russia was paying bounties on
Yep.
U.S. troops.
Yep.
Now, you know, Patricia, you're in the military,
Yep,
involved with the military. Everything about you is military.
okay.
Act like you like to hear
Yeah.
it.
Now, when you first heard that, first of all, do you have anybody overseas?
Currently, no.
Okay.
Currently, no.
All right. So if you know somebody personally who's serving tour right now,
Right.
and you heard that this was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and the administration is saying, well, the president, we may have told the president, but the president didn't hear it, and then stopped there. Didn't say if he was doing anything now because he heard it or something. How would you, as a person who was related to the military, found out that your commander in chief is not really saying anything committed towards the situation? How would you react?
I can tell you now, like I said, I grew up in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the person who's been in charge of our life, you know, of where we move, where we live. If there's a war, because my dad was over communication.
Mm-hmm.
So if something's going on, we would have to go to, okay, this is the hot spot, we have to set up communication here, blah, blah, blah. If there's a war breaking out, we have to go here because this is about to happen. That, to me, it angers me because it tells me you're our boss, but yet you care less of you care less about us as a people. You have.
You're speaking of the president?
Your president.
Mhm.
Yeah, he doesn't even care. I mean, you're supposed to be in charge of all of this, so you should listen out to what's going on and make the decisions to say.
I got some strong opinions, but go ahead.
Yeah, you know, and have make those decisions. But he doesn't care enough to even be in a meeting. He doesn't care enough to say, hey, I'm in charge, but yet you want to go have our people killed, our own people. Why can't we put him up for treason?
Okay.
Go.
When I first heard it,
Mhm.
right, and his thing, well, you know, I'm not aware of that. You know, first of all, since his first year in 2017, Pence has been going through these security briefings. So Pence has it.
Right.
Pence had the information the same as Trump had.
So he knows. He knew.
Whether he physically heard it
Yes.
or received the document is irrelevant. He's the
Right.
president of the United States. He is responsible, like she said.
Regardless.
He is responsible whether he heard it or not. The buck stops with him.
Yep.
His administration was aware, right? So if Pence is in that meeting because he don't understand what's going on in these 6 a.m. security briefings that all the presidents have done before him,
Right.
unless the president had something else to do when he couldn't be there, the vice president sit in. Pence has been in all these. He understands what's going on in these security briefings because he was part of that community council when he was in the Senate. He understands what's going on. Whatever happens, something like that, first of all, because it was Russia, he's going to downplay it anyway. That's his boy. That's going to be his sanctuary when he runs on January 21st after he loses the election and after the inauguration. That's, I think, the plan's going to fly to Russia. He's going to Russia. But because
They're gonna put him in a suitcase and just fly him off.
he's going to fly that blue and red plane overseas to Russia. He's going to land. They're going to let him in.
All
They're
right.
going to let him in.
Well,
Russia might
proceed.
shoot him down. So, but other than that, you know, because it was Russia, I think that, first of all, he's responsible. He's not going to do anything against Russia.
Right.
He already fought against having sanctions against Russia when they found out they was rigging the election in the Obama's last couple of months in office. So anything he's dealing with Russia, he's going to sidestep it. He's going to sidestep it. So he don't care.
He doesn't care
He doesn't care.
at all.
And he is responsible. So that's derelict of duty from the president. I heard a couple of senators saying that. It's dereliction of duty that he's supposed to, because he's a commander in chief. He's sworn in against any enemy, both foreign and domestic. Well, this is a foreign nation that's, I mean, if they ain't doing nothing about the election, which he's done nothing about the election, he's not gonna do anything about people dying. That's more serious. I mean, no, just look, he
So,
doesn't care.
so should we just trust our generals to do the right, to do the right thing?
If the generals had the power to do it,
Yeah.
they would do something. They would, because they don't like this guy anyway,
No.
no matter who the president is.
Yeah.
They don't like Putin. They understand he's an enemy.
Yeah.
You know, and plus these are their people. They don't want their people being targets by paid by somebody else. No, no. The generals, but they don't have the authority to do anything. So they got to play this political game. But under certain circumstances, bottom line is, I can't wait till January 20th.
Yeah, well, almost to that time. I'm sorry, do you have anything to chime in, Michelle?
I think it's just truly disgusting that he didn't have enough respect and understand the gravity of the number of lives that are in his hands, and that he knew that, or he at least had the opportunity to know what was going on, and that he's done nothing about it, and that he knew for months. And the same thing goes for Pence. I think that one of them is just as guilty as the other.
Yep.
I mean, they have the lives of the entire military force in their hands, and every decision that he makes, he should make that decision understanding the gravity of what he is responsible for. And he either got that information or didn't think it was important enough to get. Either way, he's wrong, because he didn't do anything about it. That just disgusts me.
And what would Obama or even Bush do had they got that information? What do you think they would have done?
Well,
Immediately.
They were
they were both
They
shut
would
down.
have
Yeah.
started with diplomacy first.
Yeah, the State
Yeah.
Department.
Yeah.
Right. And then they would have gone to military action because it was
Yeah.
definitely necessary, but to understand how they worked.
And they may not done it directly,
Right.
but they'd have addressed it.
They'd
Yeah.
addressed it.
Yeah, yeah. There's
To
two.
say I don't know.
Yeah,
I
there's
wasn't
two.
aware.
Yeah, there's two ways to conflict, dude.
Like it gets a pass.
Yeah.
It's like,
You ask the State Department to go to the ambassador, go to the other country's ambassador,
Yeah.
and talk it out.
Yeah.
If that don't go well, then there's boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Or nowadays, drones in the air.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, that's the military action.
yes,
But there are sanctions before that.
yes,
Yeah.
that's
So,
true.
Sanctions.
Sanctions done by Congress.
Right. Right.
I mean, I remember when, was it Iraqi war was about to break out,
Mm-hmm.
and there was just word that things were going out. They were shutting bases down. They were going into action. Civilians had no idea what was going on, but on base, you could see movement and you saw things happening.
You mean the first one or the second one?
Both,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
both.
Desert
Both.
Storm.
Desert Storm.
Desert Storm.
Yeah, I mean, it was both, and things, you could tell that there were things happening.
Because people were moving out of town.
People were
People were
moving out.
suddenly gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was just word that something was about to happen.
Hmm.
And this joker here.
Yes, it's an ongoing situation,
Mm.
which he's been quoted saying, "I take no responsibility at all." On a lighter note, we still have a census, and then in this week, in 6 states, Connecticut, Indiana, Virginia, Washington, Pennsylvania, and I forgot the state, they're coming to knock on your door if you haven't filled out your census.
Right.
The implications on this census is, it determines how many seats in Congress are awarded to your, where you live. And it involves federal dollars coming to your state and local jurisdictions, which covers what? Everything?
Pretty much.
Your safety, your health, your environment. So if you don't want these people knocking your door because they could have the Rona, go online, fill out your census, fill it out.
Some people just forget it.
Yeah, I mean, of course,
Yeah.
it's
happens.
but take 2 minutes of your time to fill out the census because it involves everybody.
They've
So-
always done that in DC. They always had volunteers come around
Yeah.
and talk to you about it, talk to the importance, help you walk you through the application process. I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Well,
I mean, with them coming to your door, it's not that big of a deal, but,
today could be some Jehovah's Witnesses to the way
Well,
the way the COVID is.
if they have a
anyway.
watchtower or they have a document in their hand, you know the difference there. So,
No offense to Jehovah's Witnesses, but I just want to put that PSA out there. Fill out your census.
It's real easy to fill out. I took forever to do it. He kept staying on me. I finally got it done, and it was really about 5 minutes worth of work. So it's not that bad.
Whoever that guy is.
That dude.
Whoever that guy is. Is there anything that of light you want to talk about? I mean, we'll get into voting because that's what I want to do right now.
Well, we skipped past Trump, but
No.
no.
Trump is all. Trump is in. Trump is all.
We got time to talk about that. A couple months left for the election.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we don't want people to forget because we know there's going to be something else coming between now and then that we can talk.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
This evening.
And we'll talk about Biden. And we'll
Probably
talk about,
right now.
Right now.
Yeah, we'll talk about Biden too. You know, because it's
Anybody,
important. Yeah. Little house cleaning. There's still elections this week in different states, and Texas is runoff. Still important to vote. And Alabama, they has another runoff. These are senatorial races. One for a Democratic on Texas. Alabama has a Republican one.
State Senate?
No, federal Senate.
Okay.
You know, it's in Texas. It's a runoff to see who's going to fight John Cornyn for his seat.
Yeah.
And in Alabama, it's a Republican runoff to see who to fight Doug Jones. The runoff in Alabama is involved with Tommy Tuberville, the former Auburn coach, against Jeff Sessions, the former Attorney General, trying to fight for his old seat back. So
That's not gonna happen.
if you're watching this in Alabama, you know, make a decision because it's going to be very.
Didn't they have one in Virginia too?
They don't have an election this week,
Okay.
or whatever the election they have is not this week.
Okay.
Other things that are going on. There's a primary in Maine,
Okay.
and I think Susan Collins is up in her side, but she'll probably win a primary. And if you are a libertarian, the Michigan State Libertarian Convention is going on as well.
Woo!
Yeah. I'm not a libertarian at all, but you know, if
We need to have a show explaining that one day.
Yeah, third party candidates,
Libertarian.
Green
talk-
Party,
Talk about what the difference from the modern progressive is.
yeah.
We need to just talk about those things. But
Absolutely.
People fully aware.
And would you like to talk about it next week?
You tell me, boss man.
You know what? Let's do it because it could be, you know.
I'm just a body in the seat.
Okay. All right. We will do that. Also, this week is tax day. Tax day is on the 15th.
Mine already been rejected. My taxes already been paid and snatched by the federal government, so
Yes.
I'm good on that end.
Yeah, the government knows where I am.
I did get my stimulus though.
You got your stimulus?
Because I did my taxes.
Yeah.
They got my latest. They paid my stimulus. I'm waiting
Well,
for the
I
next one.
did mine in February.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
No, they still have not processed it yet, and I still have not got my stimulus.
What? Everybody get your dollars.
Look, I owed money and I still got a stimulus.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
surprised. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have
Well,
not.
yeah, I got mine. I got mine. I fill
I'm
out.
still waiting on mine to be processed.
Woo.
Whoa.
No kids.
Oh, dang.
I guess the IRS will try to come and snatch the car just because I just made that public.
So,
But you guys already know.
yeah. So they owe you $1,200 plus your refund.
Yes.
That's some money.
Yes.
Go get your money, girl.
Interest, with interest.
Go get it.
They gonna charge you.
If someone can
Goes
tell me
over there.
where, I can go.
Yeah. other way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They shouldn't hold your money anytime that they didn't have to. But anyway, July 15th is election day. I mean, not election day.
Tax
day.
day.
Tax day. Either you better get an extension. I don't know why you need another extension, but
Exactly.
just file it.
July
File
15th.
it. File it.
It's funny how they do that because they push the decision on the stimulus back to the decision after Congress comes back on the 17th, which is a couple days after the taxes are due.
Mm-hmm.
So it could help a lot of people who didn't file this year, and for some reason got lost in translation from last year. They can put the new information in there, and then they'll get it. Because immediately after I filed my taxes and I got my rejection saying that, well, we're taking this and applying to your taxes due, I got my stimulus check.
Wow.
Like within 3 days.
Nice.
So I'm like,
Wow.
Nice. Well, today has been a great day. I want to thank Kenny, Michelle, and Patricia on the set. And we will come back next week, either talking about the parties or otherwise. I just want to let you know that you want to vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yeah.
Tune in to us next week And check in for KWMI-media.com. Oh, vote
No, KMWi.
KMWI-media.com for previous shows and other entertainment. Thank you. Good night.
Is there a comment?